theo Luật Đất đai năm 2013 và Luật Tiếp cận thông tin năm 2016. Quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất, bảng giá đất của địa phương phải được đăng tải trực tuyến hoặc niêm yết công khai tại trụ sở chính quyền địa phương. Tuy nhiên, việc tiếp cận với những thông tin trên ở nhiều nơi vẫn còn hạn chế, đặc biệt đối với người dân. Người dân ít có cơ hội được tham gia đóng góp ý kiến vào dự thảo quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất, bảng giá đất của địa phương. Đây là một trong những nguyên nhân dẫn tới tỷ lệ khiếu nại, khiếu kiện liên quan tới đất đai ở mức rất cao, chiếm hơn 70% số khiếu nại, khiếu kiện trên cả nước trong thời gian qua. Theo kết quả từ nghiên cứu chỉ số hiệu quả quản trị và hành chính công cấp tỉnh PAPI, từ năm 2014 đến nay, chưa đến 20% số người tham gia khảo sát biết đến quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất của địa phương. Trong năm 2020, chỉ có 4,5% số người trả lời cho biết họ có dịp đóng góp ý kiến cho quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất của địa phương. Chỉ có 52,8% số người được hỏi biết nơi cung cấp thông tin về bảng giá đất chính thức do chính quyền địa phương ban hành. Để cải thiện tình hình trên, được biết Tổng cục Quản lý Đất đai đang triển khai thực hiện thí điểm hệ thống kết nối, chia sẻ dữ liệu đất đai quốc gia. Hy vọng nỗ lực này sẽ góp phần cải thiện công khai thông tin đất đai ở Việt Nam trong thời gian tới.
To support provinces to increase citizens' access to information and transparency to land titles and registration, the Center for Education Promotion and Empowerment of Women, CPU, and the United Nations Development Program, UNDP in Vietnam, with technical support from real-time analytics, are conducting the empirical research initiative called Action Research to enhance citizens' access to land information. How to address information gaps and asymmetries about local land plans, especially for ordinary citizens. Our initiative aims for transparency, access to information, and local governance by 1. Making available online portal with data and information about available district land use plans and provincial price frames. 2. Monitoring the implementation of the application of the 2016 Law on Access to Information and the 2013 Law on Land, and by submitting requests of information on land information to respective authorities. 3. Providing policy and practical recommendations on how to improve access to information about land.
Trang thông tin đất đai là cái cầu nối để kết nối các cổng thông tin liên quan đến thông tin kế hoạch sử dụng đất cấp huyện hàng năm và bảng giá đất do chính quyền địa phương tạo ra và công khai. Trang này có những cái nội dung gì? Thứ nhất đấy là cái kế hoạch sử dụng đất hàng năm cấp huyện và bảng giá đất do chính quyền địa phương công khai. Thứ hai là chia sẻ các kết quả nghiên cứu thực chứng về công khai minh bạch thông tin đất đai, và chúng tôi cũng kỳ vọng là sẽ kết nối được các cái thông tin mà do chính quyền cấp huyện của hơn 700 đơn vị quận huyện trên toàn quốc chia sẻ để kết nối với người dân.
We at UNDP highly appreciate the collaboration of CPU and RTA in this important initiative. UN Vietnam is very grateful for the additional support of the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Irish Embassy through our Public Research Project.
Hy vọng nỗ lực này sẽ góp phần cải thiện công khai thông tin đất đai ở Việt Nam trong thời gian tới. Theo Luật Đất đai năm 2013 và Luật Tiếp cận thông tin năm 2016. Quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất, bảng giá đất của địa phương phải được đăng tải trực tuyến hoặc niêm yết công khai tại trụ sở chính quyền địa phương. Tuy nhiên, việc tiếp cận với những thông tin trên ở nhiều nơi vẫn còn hạn chế, đặc biệt đối với người dân. Người dân ít có cơ hội được tham gia đóng góp ý kiến vào dự thảo quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất, bảng giá đất của địa phương. Đây là một trong những nguyên nhân dẫn tới tỷ lệ khiếu nại, khiếu kiện liên quan tới đất đai ở mức rất cao, chiếm hơn 70% số khiếu nại, khiếu kiện trên cả nước trong thời gian qua. Theo kết quả từ nghiên cứu chỉ số hiệu quả quản trị và hành chính công cấp tỉnh PAPI, từ năm 2014 đến nay, chưa đến 20% số người tham gia khảo sát biết đến quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất của địa phương. Trong năm 2020, chỉ có 4,5% số người trả lời cho biết họ có dịp đóng góp ý kiến cho quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất của địa phương. Chỉ có 52,8% số người được hỏi biết nơi cung cấp thông tin về bảng giá đất chính thức do chính quyền địa phương ban hành. Để cải thiện tình hình trên, được biết Tổng cục Quản lý Đất đai đang triển khai thực hiện thí điểm hệ thống kết nối, chia sẻ dữ liệu đất đai quốc gia. Hy vọng nỗ lực này sẽ góp phần cải thiện công khai thông tin đất đai ở Việt Nam trong thời gian tới.
To support provinces to increase citizens' access to information and transparency to land titles and registration, the Center for Education Promotion and Empowerment of Women, CPU, and the United Nations Development Program, UNDP in Vietnam, with technical support from real-time analytics, are conducting the empirical research initiative called Action Research to enhance citizens' access to land information. How to address information gaps and asymmetries about local land plans, especially for ordinary citizens. Our initiative aims for transparency, access to information, and local governance by 1. Making available online portal with data and information about available district land use plans and provincial price frames. 2. Monitoring the implementation of the application of the 2016 Law on Access to Information and the 2013 Law on Land, and by submitting requests on land information to respective authorities, providing policy and practical recommendations on how to improve access to information about land.
Trang thông tin đất đai là cái cầu nối để kết nối các cổng thông tin liên quan đến thông tin kế hoạch sử dụng đất cấp huyện hàng năm và bảng giá đất do chính quyền địa phương tạo ra và trang này có những cái nội dung gì, trang này có những cái nội dung gì, dành chỗ cho mọi người kế hoạch sử dụng đất hàng năm cấp huyện và bảng giá đất huyện do chính quyền địa phương công khai. Thứ hai chia sẻ kết quả
đúng ạ, tiếng Việt bên cánh phải ạ, tiếng Anh bên cánh trái ạ. Anh ơi, ngồi đấy cho em, lát nữa đây anh di chuyển sẽ
kết nối được các thông tin mà do chính quyền cấp huyện của hơn 700 đơn vị quận huyện trên toàn quốc chia sẻ để kết nối với người dân.
We at UNDP highly appreciate the collaboration of CPU and RTA in this important initiative. UN Vietnam is very grateful for the additional support of the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Irish Embassy through our PAPI research project.
Hy vọng nỗ lực này sẽ góp phần cải thiện công khai thông tin đất đai ở Việt Nam trong thời gian tới. Theo Luật Đất đai năm 2013 và Luật Tiếp cận thông tin năm 2016, quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất, bảng giá đất của địa phương phải được đăng tải trực tuyến hoặc niêm yết công khai tại trụ sở chính quyền địa phương. Tuy nhiên, việc tiếp cận với những thông tin trên ở nhiều nơi vẫn còn hạn chế, đặc biệt đối với người dân. Người dân ít có cơ hội được tham gia đóng góp ý kiến vào dự thảo quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất, bảng giá đất của địa phương. Đây là một trong những nguyên nhân dẫn tới tỷ lệ khiếu nại, khiếu kiện liên quan tới đất đai ở mức rất cao, chiếm hơn 70% số khiếu nại, khiếu kiện trên cả nước trong thời gian qua. Theo kết quả từ nghiên cứu chỉ số hiệu quả quản trị và hành chính công cấp tỉnh PAPI, từ năm 2014 đến nay, chưa đến 20% số người tham gia khảo sát biết đến quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất của địa phương. Trong năm 2020, chỉ có 4,5% số người trả lời cho biết họ có dịp đóng góp ý kiến cho quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất của địa phương. Chỉ có 52,8% số người được hỏi biết nơi cung cấp thông tin về bảng giá đất chính thức do chính quyền địa phương ban hành. Để cải thiện tình hình trên, được biết, Tổng cục Quản lý Đất đai đang triển khai thực hiện thí điểm hệ thống kết nối, chia sẻ dữ liệu đất đai quốc gia. Hy vọng, nỗ lực này sẽ góp phần cải thiện công khai thông tin đất đai ở Việt Nam trong thời gian tới.
To support provinces to increase citizens' access to information and transparency to land titles and registration, the Center for Education Promotion and Empowerment of Women, CPU, and the United Nations Development Program, UNDP in Vietnam, with technical support from real-time analytics, are conducting the empirical research initiative called Action Research to enhance citizens' access to land information. How to address information gaps and asymmetries about local land plans, especially for ordinary citizens. Our initiative aims for transparency, access to information, and local governance by 1. Making available online portal with data and information about available district land use plans and provincial price frames. 2. Monitoring the implementation of the application of the 2016 Law on Access to Information and the 2013 Law on Land, and by submitting requests of information on land information to respective authorities. 3. Providing policy and practical recommendations on how to improve access to information about land.
Trang thông tin đất đai là cái cầu nối để kết nối các cổng thông tin liên quan đến thông tin kế hoạch sử dụng đất cấp huyện hàng năm và bảng giá đất do chính quyền địa phương tạo ra và công khai. Trang này có những cái nội dung gì? Thứ nhất, đấy là cái kế hoạch sử dụng đất hàng năm cấp huyện và bảng giá đất do chính quyền địa phương công khai. Thứ hai là chia sẻ các kết quả nghiên cứu thực chứng về công khai minh bạch thông tin đất đai, và chúng tôi cũng kỳ vọng là sẽ kết nối được các cái thông tin mà do chính quyền cấp huyện của hơn 700 đơn vị quận huyện trên toàn quốc chia sẻ để kết nối với người dân.
We at UNDP highly appreciate the collaboration of CPU and RTA in this important initiative. UN Vietnam is very grateful for the additional support of the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Irish Embassy through our public research project.
Hy vọng, nỗ lực này sẽ góp phần cải thiện công khai thông tin đất đai ở Việt Nam trong thời gian tới. Theo Luật Đất đai năm 2013 và Luật Tiếp cận thông tin năm 2016, quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất, bảng giá đất của địa phương phải được đăng tải trực tuyến hoặc niêm yết công khai tại trụ sở chính quyền địa phương. Tuy nhiên, việc tiếp cận với những thông tin trên ở nhiều nơi vẫn còn hạn chế, đặc biệt đối với người dân. Người dân ít có cơ hội được tham gia đóng góp ý kiến vào dự thảo quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất, bảng giá đất của địa phương. Đây là một trong những nguyên nhân dẫn tới tỷ lệ khiếu nại, khiếu kiện liên quan tới đất đai ở mức rất cao, chiếm hơn 70% số khiếu nại, khiếu kiện trên cả nước trong thời gian qua. Theo kết quả từ nghiên cứu chỉ số hiệu quả quản trị và hành chính công cấp tỉnh PAPI, từ năm 2014 đến nay, chưa đến 20% số người tham gia khảo sát biết đến quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất của địa phương. Trong năm 2020, chỉ có 4,5% số người trả lời cho biết họ có dịp đóng góp ý kiến cho quy hoạch, kế hoạch sử dụng đất của địa phương. Chỉ có 52,8% số người được hỏi biết nơi cung cấp thông tin về bảng giá đất chính thức do chính quyền địa phương ban hành. Để cải thiện tình hình trên, được biết, Tổng cục Quản lý Đất đai đang triển khai thực hiện thí điểm hệ thống kết nối, chia sẻ dữ liệu đất đai quốc gia. Hy vọng, nỗ lực này sẽ góp phần cải thiện công khai thông tin đất đai ở Việt Nam trong thời gian tới.
To support provinces to increase citizens' access to information and transparency to land titles and registration, the Center for Education Promotion and Empowerment of Women, CPU, and the United Nations Development Program, UNDP in Vietnam, with technical support from real-time analytics, are conducting the empirical research initiative called Action Research to enhance citizens' access to land information. How to address information gaps and asymmetries about local land plans, especially for ordinary citizens. Our initiative aims for transparency, access to information, and local governance by 1. Making available online portal with data and information about available district land use plans and provincial price frames. 2nd, monitoring the implementation of the application of the 2016 Law on Access to Information and the 2013 Law on Land, and by submitting requests of information on land information to respective authorities. 3rd, providing policy and practical recommendations on how to improve access to information about land.
Trang thông tin đất đai là cái cầu nối để kết nối các cổng thông tin liên quan đến thông tin kế hoạch sử dụng đất cấp huyện hàng năm và bảng giá đất do chính quyền địa phương tạo ra và công khai. Trang này có những cái nội dung gì? Thứ nhất đấy là cái kế hoạch sử dụng đất hàng năm cấp huyện và bảng giá đất do chính quyền địa phương công khai. Thứ hai là chia sẻ các kết quả nghiên cứu thực chứng về công khai minh bạch thông tin đất đai, và chúng tôi cũng kỳ vọng là sẽ kết nối được các cái thông tin mà do chính quyền cấp huyện của hơn 700 đơn vị quận huyện trên toàn quốc chia sẻ để kết nối với người dân.
We at UNDP highly appreciate the collaboration of CPU and RTA in this important initiative. UN Vietnam is very grateful for the additional support of the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Irish Embassy through our public research project.
Hy vọng nỗ lực này sẽ góp phần cải thiện công khai thông tin đất đai ở Việt Nam trong thời gian tới.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the thematic discussion on a review of local government's performance in disclosure of district land use plans and provincial land pricing frameworks, jointly conducted by UNDP Vietnam and CPU. And this is a program to share with you the findings of our review on the disclosure of the district land use plans and provincial land price framework. And also, we hope to obtain the opinions from the policy experts on policy implications. And this research aims at promoting good practices in disclosure of land information and also provides evidence for the discussion on policy reform and policy improvements. And the co-sponsors for this research is the DFAT and Irish Embassy and UNDP Vietnam. We would like to introduce Ms. Ngô Thị Thu Hà, Director of the Center for Education Promotion and Empowerment of Women, Ms. Diana Torres, Assistant Resident Representative and Head of Governance and Participation at the United Nations Development Program in Vietnam, and Associate Professor Dr. Doãn Hồng Vân, from the Law University. Ms. Nguyễn Thị Kim Thoa, the former Director General of Department of Criminal and Administrative Legislation, Ministry of Justice. Mr. Phạm Quang Tú, Vice Director of Oxfam in Vietnam. The thematic discussion is also attended by the representatives from various government agencies, international organizations, and the media agencies in Vietnam. And there are two main sections in our discussion today. The first section will be on the findings of the action-based study, a review of local government's performance in disclosure of district land use plans and provincial land pricing frameworks. And the second part is a panel discussion on the same topic. And we encourage the participants, particularly the virtual participants, to ask questions during the discussion and leave your questions in the chat box, or you can also ask your questions directly. To start our discussion today, now we'd like to invite Ms. Diana Torres from UNDP with the opening remarks. The floor is for you, Diana. Vâng, xin kính chào tất cả quý vị.
Of the Center for Education, Promotion and Empowerment of Women, distinguished panelists that are present today, participants from the central state agencies and ministries, representatives from provinces and districts across Vietnam, representatives from media agencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, everyone that is joining us here and online today. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the Green One UN House today for our thematic discussion on a critical topic, the performance of local governments in disclosure of district land use plans and provincial land pricing frameworks. I believe, and you might agree with me, that this is a very timely discussion, as we know that the National Assembly will be discussing the amendment of the 2013 land law next year. And as we have been frequently informed, land has become a heated issue in Vietnam since the country embarked on the robust economic reform in the early 1990s. Previous empirical and policy studies show that land conflicts since 2004, when the first land law came into force. And more recently, they have been triggered by the fact that land has become an increasingly scarce and valuable asset due to Vietnam's rising level of population, industrialization, and urbanization. Information asymmetry about local land plans and land pricing frameworks is an important trigger of land conflicts in Vietnam. And not only in Vietnam, but I think in many other developing countries. Under the 2013 land law and the 2016 law on access to information, local land plans and land pricing frameworks must be posted for public view at all levels and online. However, access to such essential information remains limited, and findings from our annual survey called the Vietnam Provincial Governance and Public Administration Performance Index, very well known to everyone as PAPI, have shown that below 1/5 of the national respondents have been aware of local land plans since 2011 at the national aggregated level. Similarly, the 2021 PAPI findings by the province showed that the percentage of citizens with knowledge about the 2021 land plans ranges from 5 to 30%. Also, only 42.4% of the respondents in this PAPI survey were aware of provincial land pricing frameworks. Furthermore, below 4% of the respondents said that they had an opportunity to provide comments on draft local land plans. These findings, together with other land governance-related results from PAPI surveys, suggest that the lack of transparency in land planning and acquisition schemes, combined with the low state-defined land prices and the rent-seeking behaviors among land registers, might be some of the key causes of the land conflicts in Vietnam, and especially in suburban areas. When land-related information is disclosed in an open and transparent manner, and when citizens have the opportunity to discuss draft land plans and price frameworks, the risk of corruption and the prevalence of land conflicts are likely to be reduced. And as a result, the overall citizens' trust in local governments will increase. To support provinces with enhancing access to land information for citizens and to improve land governance in Vietnam, the Center for Education, Promotion and Empowerment of Women, CPU, and the United Nations Development Program, UNDP in Vietnam, with the technical support for real-time analytics, since 2020-21, we have been conducting the empirical research initiative called Action Research to enhance citizens' access to land information. Our empirical research initiative aims to contribute to improve land governance in Vietnam. And this is how we aim to contribute to this important aspect. One, by reviewing public access to information about annual land use plans and land price frames as issued by the district governments in all 63 provinces. Second, by collecting and making publicly available the district land use plans and price frameworks for compensation on the Land Transparency e-portal that will be showcased today. Third, we are experimenting on the request for land information as provided by provincial and district governments and as regulated by the provisions of the Ordinance 34 on grassroots democracy and the 2013 land law, as well as the 2016 law on access to information. We are also providing policy and practical recommendations to central and local authorities on improving access to land information and land transparency. Right now, I wish to share one interesting and relevant finding from our 2021 PAPI survey to further show why land information is very important for land governance. Together with the survey, our UNDP research team conducted an experiment to understand which information is of the greatest interest to our respondents after completing the PAPI survey. And we shared with them a card showing 3 web links to the following. One, it was to the Land Transparency landing page as part of this action-based research. The second was an introduction to the Vietnam-European Trade Agreement. And the third option was the access to the PAPI website. And what the experiment is showing is that the data analysis show us that the most visited site by the respondents of PAPI survey was the research on land transparency and the landing page, showing that there is great interest from respondents on knowing more about land transparency and land-related matters. Ladies and gentlemen, you will hear today in great detail about the findings of this research process from our presenter, Mrs. Untitled Chapter, this morning. But allow me to mention beforehand 3 key findings from the review that I find of great significance and important for food for thought in our discussion today. The first one, only 27 out of the 63 provinces, and this is about 43%,
Thứ nhất là chỉ có 27 trên 63 tỉnh thành
posted local land pricing frameworks on their local
là
government,
công bố khung giá đất của
government portals in 2021.
trên cổng thông tin của chính quyền địa phương vào năm
Only
2021
337 out of 700
và chỉ có 337 trên 704 huyện
under
thị
the review
quận huyện.
posted local land plans on their local government portals. Only 17 of the district's people's committees websites posted all 4 required documents, including 1. Notices of disclosure of 2021 district land plans, decisions to issue 2021 district land plans, and land plan justification reports, as well as the updated land plan maps, or 3 of them except for the notices. The lack of one window for all such documents for district land plans has made difficult for citizens to find access to information in one-stop shop. We really hope that these findings from this action-oriented research, especially with experiments to request information from 704 districts, provide important evidence-based data for central and local authorities to have an overview of local government's performance in ensuring access to land information for all. They also suggest, this study and these findings also suggest important policy recommendations for review of relevant clauses in the 2013 land law for amendment and the development of the law on grassroots democracy, as well for promoting the implementation of the 2016 law on access to information at the local level. Finally, let me take this opportunity to say that UNDP highly appreciates the collaboration with our partner CPU in this important initiative. And our gratitude is extended, and thanks to all the development partners, and especially the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Australia and the Embassy of Ireland for their generous support in finding this PAPI research program. I really look forward to a fruitful discussion today so that the UNDP and everyone can learn more from the experts about our endeavors to promote right to access to information and reduce information asymmetry in land governance in Vietnam. Thank you for listening and for joining us today. Xin cảm ơn.
Vâng, và xin cảm ơn bà.
Now, thank you very much. And now let's move on to the presentation. I first would like to invite Ms. Ngô Thị Thu Hà, the Director of the Center for Education Promotion and Empowerment of Women, with the presentation on the findings. Không dùng Zoom nữa đâu, dùng Zoom rất vớ vẩn luôn. Bởi vì là Zoom bị bật.
Good morning to participants. On behalf of the research team, I would like to present the result of this research and of review of local government performance in disclosure of land information. And this is a joint initiative between CPU and UNDP. We review the disclosure of land, district land use plan and provincial land pricing framework. And Diana has mentioned briefly why we have conducted this research. And land conflicts have been a major issue that has lasted for decades in Vietnam. And according to government reports, complaints related to land accounts for more than 70% of all complaints. And the lack of transparency in land use planning and implementation is among the main contributory causes. So it's really important that we enhance public disclosure of information on district land use plans and provincial land pricing frameworks in order to mitigate land conflicts. And also, if you look at the PAPI, less than 20% of the respondents said that they had opportunities to learn about land use plans. In 2021, only 13.9% of respondents said that they had opportunities to comment on local land use plans and master plans, and only 42.4% of respondents knew where to look for the information on official land pricing framework. So we designed this research with an aim to improve the disclosure and transparency in land use right. And here the four objectives. The first one is to review public access to information about land use plan and land pricing frameworks. And secondly, to develop a website to connect to official information on land use plans and land pricing framework. And thirdly, the third objective is we conduct an experiment on request for land information as provided for in the Land on Access to Information 2016 and Land Law 2013. And based on that, we provide policy and practical recommendations. The research methodology, we review legal documents on disclosure of land information. We review the practices of disclosing information on land use plans at district level and land price framework at provincial level. We also send our request for land information and develop a landing website. There are very specific legal requirements on disclosure of land-related information, for example, Land Law 2013 or its amendment 2018 or Decree 43 on implementing the land law, Decree 148 and Decree 44 on land pricing, land valuation, and also a number of articles in the Law on Access to Information 2016 and its implementation Decree 13 2018. So as you can see here, the land use plans at district level, according to the laws, we can see in this table who is responsible for doing what. And here we see that district land use plans, the district people's committee is responsible for disclosing, and we also see the method of disclosure as well as the date of publication for the district land use plans. And at the later part, at the bottom part, you see that's the requirements of the law related to provincial land pricing list or land pricing frameworks. So in this, we look at the 2021 District Land Use Plan and 2020-2024 Land Pricing Framework. And these are the citations from the laws. So as we can see, that is the Provincial People's Committee. They have the responsibility to prepare the land pricing framework to submit to the Provincial People's Council for approval before promulgation. And this framework must be formulated every 5 years and publicly announced on the 1st of January on the first year. And we use this deadline to evaluate, to assess the timeliness. For the district's land use plans, here we also see that it's the People's Committee who's responsible for the publication of the district land use master plans and land use plans. And here we have a Decree of 148, which specifies the form of publication. So first, we review the e-portals and websites of local governments at district level and provincial level. We review the district land use plans in 2021 of all districts of the whole 63 provinces. So that's a total of 704 districts. And we also look at the publication of provincial land pricing framework for all the 63 provinces. And these are our assessment of criteria. First, whether the required information are actually disclosed. So this is just yes or no. And second is of search, whether the location of the information is convenient for searching and the number of steps needed to find the information, and the timeliness of information, whether the posting issuing date is in line with the law and regulation, and completeness. Here for the district land use plans, we have to make sure that the 4 documents are disclosed, particularly the decision on the approval of the land use plan, explanatory of report, and map of land use plan. And finally, we assess usability of information. We conduct a review up to the 6th of October 2021. for 704 websites of district governments and 63 websites of provincial governments. That is a big number, and we can't do all in one day, and that's why we need to have a closing date for the review period. Out of the 704 districts, only 337 disclosed the District Land Use Plan 2021, and only 27 out of the 63 provinces have disclosed their provincial land pricing framework for the period up to 2024. For timeliness, you can see that 123 districts disclosed on a timely basis. 135 did not disclose on the timely basis, but for 79 districts did not have a timestamp, so we don't know whether it's a timely disclosure or not. For publication of provincial land pricing framework, only 2 out of the 27 disclosed on a timely basis. And 10.7% of districts government made available to the public all the 4 documents. 6.3% only disclosed the 3 key documents. So together, 10.7 plus 6.3, we assess them as a complete disclosure. For the remaining, these are incomplete disclosure. For example, 6.7% only disclosed the decision to approve the land use plan and the map. 3% only disclosed the decision and the explanatory report, and 2% only disclosed the explanatory report and the map. And we have some observation. Usually land pricing frameworks and land use plan were issued later than the deadline specified in the 2013 land law and its implementation guidelines. Usually the issuance date are sometime after that, and most land use plan documents were not published in a full set at the same time under the same category. They are scattered in several posts and in different categories, and also a lot of abbreviations were used in the posting titles, and sometimes the format is not friendly, and this makes it difficult for searching. And there's a case of displaying the wrong date of posting. And here we also ourselves look at the information disclosed. We go to the website of we go to the home page of the website of local governments, and then if we can't find the information, we look at the columns and the tabs, and then we also go to Google to try to look for the information. Because we want to mimic how citizens are searching for the information. And here you see 2 maps. This one, the brown one, on the right side shows the publication of the provincial land pricing framework of the 63 provinces. On the right, on the left-hand side, that's the publication of the district level land use plans. So you see where the color is and where the white or the blank is. So that is easier for you to imagine how, or to figure how the situation is. And here you can see the paracel as well. And here we divide the 704 district governments into 5 subgroups. The first one is a control group, and we did not send request. And for the other 4 groups, we send requests for information by the request of information sent by the group 2 is researcher, group 3 is lawyers, and group 4 ordinary citizen, and the final group 5 is real estate agents. And we send the request for information to the offices of district level of People's Committee, because they are responsible for keeping the information and also providing the information to citizens. So in each group that I have mentioned, we divide into 2 subgroups. The first subgroups, they use a letter of request without a citation of law on rights to access to information, and the second one is with a citation of law on the right of access to information. So these are the results of our experiments. On general, 17.5% of requests were met, and 2.7% we received an explicit refusal, and 8.2% sent a response but did not provide information. 71.7% we did not receive any response. So if you look at the 4 groups, we first expected that lawyers should receive more responses or more replies from local government, but actually it's not. Only 14.9% of lawyers received the information, and actually ordinary citizens received the most responses. And we also compare between with and without citation of the law on access to information. And for letters of request that with citation, we see a higher rate of response and lower rate of refusal.
Okay, so I think that this is an important information for the civil servants at the local level to be aware of their actual performance. And next, we would like to refer to the contents in the request for information and responses from state agencies. And this is a sample request for information. And also a receipt of information. So when the request is made, this receipt is provided by the local governments to the requester. And also when they received these requests, this is a sample, an example request sent to Thematic district. And so you can see this is their response. And these are 2 refusals of providing information of Yên Thế District People's Committee. The ground for refusal is that the district government said that the requester doesn't have the, they said that they don't have the authority to provide the information, but the Đức Cơ district did share this information with the research team. So from conducting this experiment on sending out requests for information, we found out the following. Most civil servants are polite, except for the one who had a bad attitude towards researchers. Only one had an unfriendly response towards the researcher. And there is also a confusion or ambiguity about the agencies with the responsibility to provide information. For example, the civil servants were not sure about which department the letters is sent to. They may have stated that the Office of the People's Committee is not responsible for receiving requests and providing information upon request. And the majority of civil servants prefer to interact with citizens via Zalo. One official advised the requester to directly contact him through Zalo in case he needs any help, and there is no need for sending complicated forms. And also, one district, the district of Kumka in Đắk Lắk province, proposed to collect fees in accordance with Article 11 of Resolution number 03 of the People's Council of Đắk Lắk province, promulgating regulations on the rates of fees and charges in Đắk Lắk province. But then we see that this is not in line with the regulations in our perception, so we did not pursue further. Most of civil servants did not use official working email addresses, but they used personal emails instead to communicate with research team members. So we see that the digital infrastructure or the official working email system does not work as properly as it should. So even though many civil servants want to use this infrastructure, but the capacity is limited, that prevents them from using the system. However, it is out of the scope of our research. Thirdly, we intended to conduct a survey on user satisfaction with the disclosure of information by local governments. And the questions we asked include the following. Is there a map of land use plans in the land use plans documents of your locality? Is the map easy to read? Does the map have annotations on changes of land use plan? And is the map practical? So these are the 4 questions that we asked. But in the first round of survey of research, we realized that tracing the use of logs keeping are not very easy for us to make it easy for the users. So based on our findings, we propose several recommendations. First, we realized that the law on access to information is different from the law on education and promotion of legal regulations. Because it provides for responsibilities and obligations of government agencies in exercising protecting or ensuring the right to access to information of citizens. So we recommend to amend and promulgate the process of providing information at the request of citizens to the current set of administrative procedures. Second, we also recommend to specifically regulate the forms and channels for publication of provincial land pricing framework, so that we can have the grounds to evaluate whether the disclosure of information is sufficient, whether the details disclosed are sufficient and comply with the requirements. For some further practical recommendations for enforcement of laws, we recommend that there needs to be more effective enforcement of existing laws and policies. We recommend that there needs to be a development and disclosure of information disclosure regulations. Second, setting up focal points for information disclosure of provincial people's and district people's committees, and also putting up a separate page on disclosure of information on the official government's website. We also highlighted 9 tasks that each state agencies must do as specified in the law on access to information. And so the People's Committee should organize training for focal points on this topic. And also the People's Committees at all levels should implement more effectively the law on access to information 2016, thereby contributing to better implementation of land information disclosure in accordance with the Land Law 2013, and also publish the full pack of land use plan and the land pricing framework. And also, there is a need of upgrading the electronic portal of governments in order to improve the searching functions of these websites. So this is a link on công khai thông tin đất đai.info, and I'd like to invite my colleague, Ms. Chang, with a demonstration of how the page should be navigated about, and you can see how to use it.
Thank you, Ms. Ha. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chang. I'm from CPU and a member of the research team. And to continue, I would like to briefly demonstrate how you can navigate through the land information website. So you can see here, and you can use your mobile phone right now to conduct a search. This website, this portal has been developed since 2021, and this is a product of between CPU, real-time analytics, and UNDP. This is a search tool for the public. You can see the search for information column, result of the research, and also reference information. So I'm guide you through the first part. That's how you search for the information in a few simple steps. And we believe that it is much user friendly for the public to find the information on the district land use plans and land pricing frameworks disclosed by the authorities. For example, pick up a province. I would pick up Bắc Ninh as an example. Yes, I go to Bắc Ninh province. So you can either type in the name, or you can use the menu, the drop-down menu here to pick up. And then you pick up a district Yên Phong, for example. And then I pick up the year, the year. So here only land use plans for 2021. So I press the button here, and it would link you to, it will bring you to the link where Yên Phong district government publish their land use plan. Well, the connection is not very good, but you can see right here. Yes, this is the link where you have the published land use plans of Yên Phong district, and they disclose 3 documents. The first is the announcements of the land, the approval, and the land use plan, as well as the map. A full set requires 4 documents. So here one is still missing. That's the explanatory report. And now back to our land website, the first tab here. Yes. Another example, we go to Hanoi. Just pick up Hanoi here. Make sure you write the right word. Yes, and then we pick up Dong Da district. That's where I live, so that's why I'm interested in the land use plan of 2021. I choose 2021. So here you can see, notice that the information is not yet disclosed. So Dong Da district hasn't published the 2021 land use plan yet. So now try another, that's to look for the land pricing framework. We go for Sơn La province, and then for 2020-2024, that's the latest one, and that brings you to the link, the page where they disclosed the provincial land use land pricing framework. So back to our website, this is an useful tool for you to search for the information. So the purpose here is not to disclose everything that we know about the land use plan or land pricing framework, because they are actually published in a number of pages. We just try to pull everything together by putting here all the links to the official pages where the disclosure are made at the district level and also provincial level. And here, this is an overview of the current practices of disclosure of land related information. Here we have the map, which you already saw in the presentation. The districts in navy here are those districts who have disclosed their 2021 land use plans. Yes. Well, can you get to the other part? Yes. Here you see a list of districts. If you press the button, that would lead you to a list of districts that have disclosed their land use plans, as well as the links to the document that they have published. So it's a total of 704 districts, and it is updated as of the 6th of June 2021. It's like the closing date of the review period for our research purpose. And similarly, you can conduct a search through this tab, which is the land pricing framework in dark orange. And here, some reference information which tells you more about the legislation on land and legislation on access to information, as well as some other links to PAPI, to and here it's a brief introduction of this initiative. The initiative jointly conducted by UNDP, CPU, and Real-Time Analytics, RTA, and a short video clip that tells you about the initiative. And that's a brief introduction of the page, the landing page, and how you can navigate through this page to look for the officially disclosed information. So we encourage you to familiarize yourself with the page, and we hope that local governments will continue their efforts in disclosing land-related information as required by law. And we hope those districts and provinces who haven't, they should do so very shortly, because we really hope that the map will be all covered with color. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Ngô Thu Hà and Lê Thị Thu Trang, for your discussion. And to continue, we have the panel discussion on the performance of disclosure of land use information at the district level and the provincial land pricing framework. And the panelists will be Associate Professor Dr. Doãn Hồng Nhung, Senior Lecturer from the Law Faculty, Hanoi National University, Ms. Nguyễn Thị Kim Thoa, former Director General of the Department for Criminal and Administrative Law, Ministry of Justice, Mr. Nguyễn Phương Bắc, from the Socio-Economic Development Research Institute of Bắc Ninh Province, Ms. Trần Thị Lan Hương from the World Bank Vietnam, and Mr. Phạm Quang Tú from Oxfam Vietnam. Yep, thank you. And the panelists are invited to go to the stage. And Ms. Ha and me will be facilitators for the discussion. Please be seated. Yes, Mr. Tu just mentioned that the arrangement of seats here needs to ensure gender equality, but now we have more female panelists than male. I wonder if it is because our women are more interested in having transparency. Maybe it is not so. Yeah. Well, now we'll start our panel discussion, and thank you very much for following the event both online and on site. We are live streaming the event through our webinar channels and Facebook channels. And we would like to welcome the panelists, not only the ones who are sitting here with us, but we would also like to extend our warmest welcome to all participants and representatives of provinces and districts who are following this discussion online. So I hope that you will also be thinking about your questions and then participate in this discussion. And before starting our discussion, I'd like to introduce the panelists to you. First, Ms. Nguyễn Thị Kim Thoa. She used to be the director of the Department of the Criminal and Administrative Law of Ministry of Justice. She received the doctorate on public law from the Albert Ludwig Freiburg University, Germany. And she has made great contributions to the work of the Ministry of Justice, including being the focal points and the leader in drafting and development of the law on development of legal normative documents, the law on administrative sanctioning, and the law on access to information. And Ms. Thoa is currently a visiting professor at the law faculty Law University, Judicial Academy, and Ho Chi Minh Academy of Politics. Mr. Nguyễn Phương Bắc is currently the director of Bắc Ninh Socioeconomic Research Institute, and he is responsible to the Provincial People's Committee, People's Council, the chairman of the People's Committee on the operations of his institute in exercising and implementing the assigned task. And he's also an expert, a researcher in PAPI research, and an expert in measuring citizen satisfaction towards public services. And he is among the designers of the competitiveness index at the departmental level. The third panelist is Associate Professor Dr. Doãn Hồng Nhung. Dr. Doãn Hồng Nhung has been working in many important positions.
So she's currently assuming a number of important posts, for example, senior lecturers and professor at the economic law faculty of the National University of Hanoi. And she's also the deputy head of the legal affairs division of the real estate Asian Associations of Vietnam, and senior lecturers for the Central Unions of Vietnamese Women. And the next panelist is my best friend, Ms. Trần Thị Lan Hương. She's currently a senior public governance specialist, and she's engaged in governance and institutional reforms, including enhancing the performance of the public sector, access to information, transparency, and accountability. She's now working with the national governments and local governments in promoting the information space for smart governance. Before her experience with the World Bank, she used to work for the Development Agency of Finland. And our next panelist is Mr. Phạm Quang Tú. He is the Deputy Director of Oxfam Vietnam. Before he started his work with Vietnam, he have more than 16 years working for NGOs in Vietnam in various technical and leadership positions. His expertise focuses on civil society development and multi-stakeholder support, sustainable use of natural resources. And thank you for accepting our invitation to this panelist discussion. And we would like to address the first question to Professor Doãn Hoàng Nhung. Professor Doãn Hoàng Nhung, we understand that you have been assuming a number of important positions, and you are highly interested in land-related issues, and also are the deputy head of legal affairs of the Real Estate Association. So can you give your comments on the observations and recommendations presented, and what are your observations about the land law implementation? The law implementation in disclosure of land-related information in Vietnam, and what should be done in order to improve such disclosure practices?
Thank you very much for asking me a difficult question with multiple elements in it, and I'll try to address each one of them one by one from the perspective of a lecturer specializing in land law in the law faculty of Hanoi National University. I've been working closely with this topic for the last 10 years. And when we look at this research that was conducted between July 2021 and June 2022, I realized that this is a significant review of 700 districts, checking for their disclosed information on the World Wide Web. And this is a smart way of conducting a research in this COVID-19 context. I also appreciate the efforts of the research team for the methodology that they have used in conducting the research and the ways in which they looked for the evidence of the performance on land information disclosure. We see that in order to evaluate the transparency and the access to information from this electronic portal, from the observations of websites and from the e-portals, we can see that the index of access to land information in all 63 provinces has been looked at. And I also appreciate that the research has already gone as far as the Hoàng Sa district. So this is a comprehensive review on access to land information for citizens in Vietnam. And this is also an effort to evaluate the transparency, not only in land information, but also the economic development from a certain angle. So we hope that we can have more insights into how access to information is currently being exercised and how we can improve the access to information. And also even for the people with limited access to technology. In Vietnam, the improvement of land information to citizens also involves greater role of the government in land management and land information provision, and it also matters a lot to the right of citizens to information. So the disclosure of land information will serve the purpose of economic activity of the people, and also once again emphasizes the role of the government in governing and managing land and mitigating land conflicts. While we acknowledge that there have been improvements in land information access and provision, still the information on the land pricing framework, for example, is still very limited, and it does not suffice the people's interest and needs in obtaining information about land use. And one thing about transparency or information disclosure here has to do with the attitude of civil servants at the local levels. The citizens want to have more information. However, to have access to this information, we realize that the provision and openness or disclosure of information in provinces varies a lot. In many provinces and districts, information is not disclosed transparently, not sufficient, and many elements are missing So there needs to be much more specific processes and procedures for disclosure of land information. The land use plans are provided on an annual basis. However, the land plans, master plans, are developed every 10 years and are closely linked to the development strategies of the locality. So the land use planning is also closely related to the development strategies of the locality, respectively. And it is also a ground for the government to look at these land prices to regulate the land prices in order to ensure that the budget revenues are not affected. The citizens should also exercise their responsibilities and obligations to the government in land use. So the Land Law 2013 is an opportunity for us to specify these land access to land information to support the government to manage land resources better and more effectively, and also to support citizens to exercise their rights and obligations in a more concrete manners, realizing their responsibilities towards land as valuable resources of the country. And in recent time, I realized that disclosure of land pricing framework and the fact that people have access to land information is a way for the government to control the government's power over land resources. Because for this control of power, a very important channel for controlling the power is from the citizens' side. This is also a performance of democracy and citizens' rights that are specified in 2013 Constitution and 2013 Land Law. And the amendment of 6 decrees in recent time demonstrate great efforts by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment in amending and improving the legal regulations on land. So briefly, those are my responses to the questions asked by the MC. Thank you very much for your listening.
Well, thank you. Dr. Thoa, you have a lot of experience in the areas of criminal and administrative legislation, and you have been you were an important member of the process of drafting the law on access to information. So can you tell us what does the law say about the rights of access to information related to land, and what is the role of the law on access to information on promoting the rights of access to information in the areas of inland? Well, good morning. Thank you, for the question. There are two parts of your question. What are the legal provisions on the access to information? Citizens have the rights of access to information. Yes. They have the rights. That means that would depend on the level of disclosure. But the 2013 Constitution has an important text, that is. So if you look at the Constitution, the Constitution 1992, the Constitution 1992 say you are allowed to have access to information, but the Constitution 2013 says you have the right. And the law on access to information are based on two important pillars. First, the obligations of disclosure by local and by governments at different levels. And the second pillar is how the disclosure is made. If the information is not made available to the public, then citizens have the right to request for information, as you did in the experiment. And if they refuse to provide the information, actually you can have the right to complain. And you've mentioned that most of the government officials, they prefer to use Zalo for interacting. But actually, that by using Zalo, you are losing your rights. You are, you are surrendering, you are giving away your right, because you have to lodge your request for information through the official channel. So if you have already lodged a request for information in the official channel and the request is refused, then you can file a complaint. And you can even go further by using your right of denunciation. So the obligations are there. So actually the obligations of providing information to citizens have existed since the 1992 Constitution. So it's not something new that introduced that's only introduced recently. So the obligation and the responsibilities are on authorities to make the information available to the public. Before the law on access to information, the Constitution already required the authority to provide information, and also the land law had similar requirements. The law on access to information provide citizens with important tools for access to information, and it's a kind of enforcement mechanism under which the authorities have to or must provide the information, because so here we have to combine both legislation on land. So if you look at the text of the circular issued by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, it's an interesting legal instrument because it is quite clear and explicit about the type of documents that must be disclosed. And in addition, so you have 4 types of documents for disclosure to be disclosed by the authorities. And according to the land law, this is an obligation. But we've found out that not all local authorities have fulfilled their obligation. And even when they published the information, in a number of cases, they only published part of the information. And I really like the idea of experimenting the request for information. And I totally agree with Professor Nhung that it's really important that the attitude, the awareness of the government officials should change, should be improved, and also the awareness of the public. They know their rights and they exercise their right. And also the government officials are aware of the obligations and the responsibilities. So in this experiment, you send the request for information. And so if, as a citizen, I visit the website, I can find the information on the land use plans. So according to the law, I have the right to request for the information, but the request must be filed to the office of the district's People's Committee. And in a number of cases, you can send the request to the commune's office committee as well. So the office of the district committee, they are not the one who produce the information. They may refuse to provide the information if they are not the producer of the information, but according to the land to the law on access to information, they have to explain, they have to refer the requesters to the relevant authorities, or they have to explain why they request the request is refused. I had a case where in Khánh Hòa province, the local authorities refused to provide information, but actually this originated from their lack of awareness. A citizen filed a request for information, lodged a request for information about a golf course, and the golf course land use plan was created by the People's Committee, and the citizen filed a request to information to the chair of the People's Committee. Actually, it should be sent to the office of the People's Committee, and the office is obligated to provide the information. But actually, the information was created before the enactment of the law on access to information. And that's a complicated case. The court has actually referred the case back for the first instance trial. So, I mean, there's also a lack of understanding about the law on access to information. Coming back to the topics that we are discussing here, the first question is whether the legislation is adequate, and second, whether the legislation is being implemented. And here I am very interested in your recommendations about having a focal person for providing information as requested. Here, the creator of the information is responsible for the information, and the office of the People's Committee is responsible for providing the information. But in many cases, the problem is the agency who's responsible for providing the information on the land may not be in the position to understand which information is allowed for disclosure and which one is not. It must be the creator of the information. So when it comes to disclosure of land related information, the responsibility should be with the creator of the information. And another question is, we have the land use master plan for 5 years, but annual land use plan, the problem is the short time frame has created a lot of confusion. But that's a different question. Yes. So just some of my observation and responses.
Thank you, Ms. Hoa, for your comments. So I can find valid points on how to hold the commune government to perform better in providing information, because the commune governments are closest to citizens. So how can we help citizens to have better access to information? Ms. Lan Hương will share with us later a research conducted in 2013 on access to land information at the commune level and the issues involved. And in this context of improved technology, we would see a different picture. The next question goes to Mr. Nguyễn Phương Bắc. We saw on Bắc Ninh government's portal as a good example of providing land information on the provincial websites. However, from the review in 2021, only 2 districts of Bắc Ninh province did actually publish the land use plans of the district on the district portal. In terms of the land pricing framework, we could not find the land pricing framework on the provincial website. So what do you think about this? And what do you think about the responsibilities of the provincial government in checking and making sure that land information is disclosed properly? And in your view, in the coming time, what Bắc Ninh in particular and other provinces in general can improve the land transparency? Thank you for your question, Ms. Huyền. Last year, we worked with the Bắc Ninh Provincial e-portal, organized a webinar with Mr. Ha here on the information to be disclosed. And in that webinar, we set up a list of information to be disclosed, and then we have seen improvements made on the provincial portal, and then a set of regulations were enacted for coordination between provincial departments and agencies to improve information on the provincial website. And in my opinion, when it comes to transparency on provincial e-portal, we have acknowledged significant improvement already. If we could see from the PCI results, information, transparency has improved, and the result also almost doubled compared to previous years. So obviously, the previous workshop on information sharing organized by Ms. Ha's center has helped a lot, right? So we have seen changes, positive changes in provinces that have paid more attention to this topic. And possibly there may be missing information in the subpages of the provincial e-portal. For example, the subpage on natural resources and environment, for example. And we have different columns, there are different pages on the website with information provided by different functional departments, such as the Department of Planning and Investment or Department of Natural Resources and Investment. So they may publish land information from different perspectives. Donray, for example, would publish the long-term land pricing framework, while the land prices of individual plots would be disclosed by the Departments of Finance. So at least we had come up with a list of information to be disclosed on the provincial website. And the one good thing about it is that it seems that land information is more adequate than other types of information. For example, for land information, we can find district level land use plans for 2021, 2022. One more good thing is that on the menu on land information on the provincial website, we can see the list of projects with the specific locations. For example, Project A or Project B has been assigned or proposed the land plot number ABC. And also, PAPI survey already did a measurement of disclosure of land information, including land use plans and land pricing frameworks, and related rights and obligations of stakeholders. So the measurement has already been done under the PAPI survey, in my understanding. So in terms of solutions to improve transparency, I think that in Bắc Ninh, we have seen a new solution that the provincial website needs to be evaluated on a monthly basis. Iterative instruction number 02 of the Provincial Government People's Committee requests for the e-portal to be evaluated and scored on a monthly basis. But maybe it is not enough. Perhaps we should request that the departments with the names on the list need to also review and monitor their own disclosure of information. So for each departmental unit, they need to develop the system of information or a list of information items to be disclosed. And then the People's Committee would then specify specifically, for example, for the Department of Construction, these are the types of information you need to disclose, you need to publish on such and such frequency. And these would be the lists for information items for Department of Justice, for example. So what I mean is that there needs to be a clear, explicit list of information items to be disclosed in alignment with the law on access to information. So we will base on the law on access to information and the Land Law 2013 to provide a list, to consolidate such list for the People's Committee to request or to mandate the functional departments to provide such information on the provincial's website. So that can be a solution. And I think that if many websites or many pages publish information at the same time, it would be beneficial for the people and there is no harm, because the more websites provide information, then the higher chance for us to search for the information we want to see. What would be the role of the district governments? For district governments, I agree that the level of transparency is still limited. And it is a good thing that Bắc Ninh already has some transparency already. But the provincial governments already contains all the district land use plans, but without maps, but together with decisions on issuance of these land use plans. So I think that it is part of the solution I have just mentioned, right? So, of course, not only the functional departments of the province, but also district governments have also been have to be mandated to provide information in alignment with a designated checklist. So, yeah, I think that this may not be a topic that has received much attention so far, so we need to work more on this front. Thank you, Mr. Bắc, for recognizing our efforts as meaningful to local governments, Bắc Ninh at least, right? Now we want to see more support from other provinces. Ms. Trần Thị Lan Hương is a senior and experienced public governance specialist from the World Bank, and she has been working with many organizations on promoting governance in Vietnam. And to our understanding, in 2013-2014, the World Bank conducted a research on the level of land information disclosure at the commune level. Ms. Hương, can you share with us the similarities and differences between the two research, the World Bank's research back in 2014 and our research that we are talking about today? And in your opinion, how can we improve the land use, the land information disclosure and transparency in the coming time, especially on the virtual environment? Thank you, Ms. Hai. Ms. Huyền, I'd like to congratulate the research team for a very interesting research with insights on the actual performance of land information disclosure in Vietnam. As I refer to the research that we conducted in 2014 on land information disclosure, this is a work jointly conducted by the World Bank and Deposen consulting firm. We also conducted the research on the websites of 63 provinces and about 100 districts, and also communes as well. So we reviewed the websites of all provinces and selected districts and communes. We also conducted site visits to check on the site the performance of land information disclosure. Actually, it was a repeated research. We initiated the research first in 2010, and we want to monitor to see whether there have been improvements over time. Interestingly, between 2010 and 2014, there were certain improvements in transparency in land information disclosure. And if we compare with this research conducted by CPU and UNDP, we can also say that there has been improvement. However, still very limited. I could share with you the findings from 2010 and 2014 research in comparison with the latest research conducted by the CPU and UNDP. And in World Bank's research, we looked at 4 groups of information: land use plans and land use master plans, and master plans. And between 2010 and 2014, we see that the provinces started to disclose information on the provincial websites, the things such as the land use plans, however, at a minimal level. And it is similar to the level of disclosure seen in your latest review? So the level of disclosure is very limited in the surveyed provinces, less than 10%. And other information such as land use plans, the situation also varied across localities. So somewhere around 40-50% at the district level. So very much along the line of what we have had in this latest review. Going back to the questions, why land information disclosure? What are the benefits? Of course, people have better access to information, but how that would benefit socio-economic development and poverty reduction and control of corruption. In our survey in 2014, we compared our results with PAPI results back at that time. We also compared that with the poverty rates of provinces and various indexes such as the Information Transparency Index of VCCI. There is a correspondence. The poverty reduction results are correlative. There is a correlation between poverty reduction results and transparency or disclosure of land information. So there was correlation between the level of development, socioeconomic development, and poverty reduction and land information disclosure. But then what would it mean for us? What kind of recommendations should we make to local governments on improving their disclosure of land information and how to improve the compliance with the laws on access to information and the land law? So the provinces are also competing in terms of attracting investors. So the greater transparency, the more competitiveness the province will have in terms of attracting investors. And Vietnam is already a lower middle income country. So the demands by the citizens for service to be provided by governments also increases, and people become more demanding to be satisfied. And it is clearly seen in the point made by Ms. Thoa before, to be allowed or to have the right to request. So this has also reflected in the efforts made by the governments in improving land information disclosure.
The second point that I would like to make is how to improve disclosure and access to information. The report has also mentioned some good practices at the local level. And in our 2014 research, we also had some good practices. You don't need to go abroad to look for good practices. Actually, within the country, like Bắc Ninh or Ho Chi Minh City, you also have the good practices. Phú Thọ or Huế or Đà Nẵng, they have made a lot of efforts in governance, in accountability and disclosure. And that also helps to improve competitiveness at the local level. So I think initiatives and best practices at the local level should be shared across the country as well. Because in many cases, they did not fulfill their obligation because they were not aware of that. So sharing and mutual learning are really important. And the third point that I would like to make is we been working with Hà and Ms. Thoa and Huyền in the project on the land on access to information as well as on promoting access to information in Vietnam. In Vietnam, it's really important to help the public be aware of their rights and exercise their rights. Because as we said, it's kind of like a demand induced. On the supply side, it's local governments. It's governments, and we support them in providing information, but it should be driven by demand as well. So the role of NGOs like CPU is very important because you are helpful in improving awareness among the public about their right of access to information. As we have build capacity on the supply side, and we have more on demand side, that would arrive at a better outcome. Thank you, Ms. Hương. You've mentioned a very important aspect, and that's also part of the objective of this research. We want to improve both on the supply side and the demand side. And we really should help governments or authorities to first ensure that they have good compliance with what they are obligated to, and also and also help the public by using the single point website for access to information. But we have actually, for this research, we had some time constraints with the COVID-19 pandemic, and also the Tet, the Lunar New Year holiday. We hope that with the recommendations provided by the research, we would be someday compare between before and after. But I mean, Bắc Ninh, for example, they have people who are the change champion. They've been involved in some discussion with us, and then they initiated their good practice as well. So human resources play a very important role. And when it comes to human resources, it's not just about people who work for the government, but also people from the CSO sector, development partner organizations. And here we have an expert who have multiple years working with NGOs and working in the areas of governance of natural resources. Thank you, Mr. Phạm Quang Tú, for accepting our invitation. With your vast experience in promoting good governance in land-related issues, we hope you will be able to share with us about the the role of social organization, CSOs, in assessing the law compliance by compliance with policies and laws by government and authorities, and what are the challenges in your oversight role. Thank you, Huyền, for inviting me to be part of this event. I would like to congratulate UNDP, CPU, and for the research team for this very fruitful exercise. I think you've made a smart choice when it comes to the research topic. Land-related issues have a lot of implications for the livelihoods of citizens. So I really like your choice of the research topic, and also it's a cross-cutting issue because it's not just related to land and livelihoods, but also to the access to information. So this cross-cutting aspect is of high interest to me. And the another point that has been made by Professor Nhung is you've utilized innovative methods for conducting your research, given the social distancing requirements imposed during the pandemic. And also you look at the two sides of the coin, the provision of information and also the exercise of the right to access to information. And you also developed a single point webpage where you pull all together the links to the disclosed information. And later on, I would make some recommendations on how to improve this. But I think this has been a wonderful research given the time and resource constraints. And to respond to Huyền question, in 2016, Oxfam has worked in a project to exercise oversight of citizens, and this have to do with the ordinance on grassroots democracy, and also Article 199 of 2013 land law, where citizens or by themselves or via the role of their representative organization to exercise their oversight of the compliance with the land-related legislation by authorities. So we look at the role of the Fatherland Front as well as the community-based organizations, because in a number of communities they set up their own organization for overseeing the compliance with land-related regulations and legislation. And we have the legal framework, and also the land is a topic that attracts a lot of attention from the public. So there has been a high level of interest among the public when it comes to overseeing the compliance with the land-related legislation. So we had favorable legal framework and high level of interest among the public, and we also had perfect partners in our project, and the project lasted over a year with a lot of fruitful results. And after the oversight process, only at the commune level, we've made some useful recommendations which resulted in actions taken by authorities in improving their compliance and implementation of the legislation. But what were the challenges faced in that project? In order to exercise the effective oversight or supervision, you need information, right? For example, if today you see someone come with the equipment, and it seems that they will be doing something in this piece of land, but you should have, in order to exercise your oversight, you should have the information. But back at that time, we did not have much access to public information. We had to go to government authorities asking for the information. And I might remind you that's prior to the enactment of the law on access to information. So the availability of information was limited. Fortunately, later on, we had the enactment of the law on access to information, which has proven to be a useful framework. And another challenge is the take-up rate of recommendations. So we did the oversight, we detected the problems, we put forward the problems for discussion, and through Vietnam Fatherland Fund and community-based organization, we submitted our recommendations, but we received little response. So at time, we had difficulty in getting the response. So I think this research has successfully completed the things that we were not able to do in our previous research. I will provide my concrete comments and suggestions for improvement later on, but I think it's really important to use the findings from this research as an input for revising the land law, because we are not criticizing or blaming. We need to provide the information for the authorities to help them to understand where the areas for improvement are. For example, only 17% of the website provided or disclosed all the 3 key or all the 4 documents. And we should dig down further. So there's legal requirements, but why? Why only 17% of them comply with it? Is it because of the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure? Or is it because of the lack of professionalism among public servants? For example, they prefer using Zalo because it's not in their official capacity, right? So if it is not in official capacity, you can't file a complaint against their performance. So is it because of the lack of professionalism, or is it just because of their limited awareness of what should be disclosed? Because here it's a request for information initiated by citizens, and if the civil servant lacks capacity or have limited awareness, so we have to build their capacity, we have to provide training. But if it's the lack of professionalism, they know what they are supposed to do, but they don't do it, then disciplinary action may be needed. So it's really important to dig down further so that we can have actionable recommendations. And most districts disclose their annual land use plan late. So there have been some delays, but we need to see what is the average time delay? Because 6 months delay is different from 1 week delay, right? Citizen, the group of citizens had more information, a more response rate, right, than the group of lawyers. Because we need to look, we dig down further, because if in the same district, the group of ordinary citizens had higher response than the group of lawyers, then it's a different question. Because here I think it's in this district you send the information, the request of information from ordinary citizen, but in another district you send the request of information from a group of lawyers. And also the responsibilities for disclosing, publishing information is different from the responsibility for providing information. So, I mean, Ms. Thoa is an expert, so she knows that's the difference. But for me, as an ordinary citizen, I couldn't figure out that difference, because disclosing, publishing the information is the responsibilities of the organization or agency who create the information, but it's a different entity who is responsible for providing the information upon request. So I think it's also important to change the law to make this easier for compliance. And I did ask Huyền a question when about the web portal. For example, we just experimented and we looked at Đống Đa district of Hanoi, and it's we did not see any disclosed information. But if, for example, the authorities of Đống Đa district saw this or had the information from the discussion today, and they disclose the information. So my question is whether RTA, whether real-time analytics can automatically convert or automatically change color from white to navy, for example, or do we have to wait another year? So the project is short-lived. I mean, project exists for a limited time frame, but we want this to be sustained. So the ownership of the local ownership of the information website is really important. So how to work with the government to ensure that even when the project ends, this will sustain fine to the future.
Thank you, Mr. Tu, for sharing with us great ideas and great suggestions to the research team. I just want to explain that within the scope of this research, we need to accept certain limitations, such as further insights into the actual circumstances of district people's committees, to evaluate the infrastructure conditions, the ICT conditions that they have. Civil service attitude and professionalism would not be easy to evaluate. It would also be hard to evaluate the level of awareness. However, from our cooperation with the National Academy of Politics, there is one thing that we know, that the commune governments have not been invested sufficiently in terms of e-government systems or infrastructure. So they are not well equipped to serve their own operational purpose in the first place, let alone serving citizens' interest. I know that there are many participants from provinces and cities, including Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Sóc Trăng, Cà Mau, who are following the event online with us. We also have colleagues from Hà Tĩnh, Hà Giang. So you are invited to share with us difficulties and challenges that you are facing at the district level to first comply with the regulations. Second, the real timeliness of the website. That is our aspiration. But you know, the formats of websites in Vietnam is horrible because, you know, the only consistent thing that we can find here is the provincial e-service portals. Otherwise, there is no consistencies or even similarities in the formats in different provinces' website. For example, land information disclosure of a district, there is supposed to be an explicit domain, right? However, even though information is disclosed, but the localities would do it at their own discretion. So it's really hard for the searchers for this information when we surf the webs to search for the right information. That's why we had to discuss many times on the evaluation criteria to decide whether this can be deemed as disclosure, because information may be provided not under the page of the Department of Natural Resources and Environment, but in other places, and it's all over the places, right? So I hope that there might be a higher level of codification sometimes in the future, or consistency, or some certain standards and criteria for information disclosure for e-portals of governments at all levels to enable access to information by users. And we still do not talk about the people with disabilities access to information, because we have just talked about those who could use their smartphones or laptops on access to information. What about people who are left behind, people with disabilities from more disadvantaged people? PAPI results also show that the King group have better access to land information. Male have better access than female, because males seem to be using internet more than women, for example. So somehow we cannot ensure the full coverage and the equality in access to information. We still provide information in a fairly unuser-friendly for people with disabilities, for example. When I try to find the map for Thanh Xuân district where I live, and I try to locate the land plots of the building that I reside, I can find some information. However, it's very hard to read because it is a static image. It's not a dynamic image, right? So I think that this is a task that the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment has promised, but not yet implemented. I remember that Monterey promised that in July 2017 we'll have this map system for land information. So just want to leave a reminder here to Monterey that that page will soon be introduced. And I hope that this discussion is a gentle reminder to local governments to be more proactive in disclosing information. Citizens will search for information when they need, but as suppliers, we will need to be proactive and take initiative in disclosing information. So thank you all the panelists for your useful information. And now we will turn to questions from the audience. One question to Mr. Buck. I found that in the results, in the findings, Bắc Ninh has not disclosed the Provincial Land Pricing Framework 2020-2021, and only 2 districts disclosed land use plans. What is your view on this, Mr. Bắc? Well, I think this information is outdated already because it was in October last year, but now things have changed. What I want to tell you is that Bắc Ninh has done some job. So at least responding to people's or citizens' request for information. Second, all complaints or questions or comments or complaints from the people sent to the functional departments, responsible departments. And then people would receive responses, and then they can give their comments on whether or not the responses are satisfactory, and they can also challenge the responses. So you see that all the complaints and questions here should go in the official communication channel to all functional departments. And it is good because the software already solves the problem of confusion or difficulties in addressing questions and complaints. Second, the complaining app for citizens is made available, and it was launched this year. So this app for complaints usually receive the complaints or questions about a piece of land, for example. Some questions may not specifically address the land nature, but in the answer, we may also find the elements of land. And also, we have QR code that is posted in all communes. And then the single window office of all communes would use this QR code for surveys. And citizens will provide their feedbacks via this QR code, including many land issues. So that is a third channel that we could use for communication. So land access to information is only the minimal that governments are obligated to do. And in order to improve business environment and public governance, such as PAPI PAR Index, governments can take their own initiatives in doing many other things. And in reality, these their complaints or questions can be answered without having to be in a certain forms. People do not need to know that this is a law on access to information. So perhaps the law is being implemented in essence much more than we thought. And maybe the law on access to information also needs to be amended to reflect the new circumstances. Thank you, Mr. Buck. Now we are receiving questions from the audience in the room. Mr. Long, please.
Comments or question? And we also encourage Zoom participants to share the comments and questions as well. My name is Tạ Long. I used to work for Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences, and I would like to raise a question to the research team. We've mentioned the demand side. So on demand side, which group are the most interested in land use information? And for or land related information, and why there are more informations on the land use plan than the land pricing framework, and which actors is the most influential on disclosure of land related information. And probably the question is also addressed to Mr. Park, because at provincial level, for example, which departments are most interested in these kind of land use, land information? And so we would ask Ms. Thoa and Mr. Park to address the question later relating the actors, but I would give chance to Ms. Ha first, the research team first, because on the demand side, we've seen high level of interest in land information. And Dinah, in her opening remarks, referred to our small experiments in PAPI surveys. We gave them the link of the 3 websites, including this website. Another one is the EU EVFTA, and the third one is PAPI. And among and we see that the number of people who visited this website is the land website is the highest. And which groups are more interested? For PAPI, King ethnic group visited more than other ethnic groups, and men tend to visit this website more than women. But we hope to have more in-depth research into this. Mr. Ha, well, the question is very hard for us because we only review the methodology. We review the websites of the 63 provinces and 704 districts. We don't have in-depth survey or interviews. We did not have it. And we sent request for information, and only 17% got the response as requested. So we appreciated the response provided by districts. I mean, their attitude, service attitude is should be appreciated. Even though the information they provided may not be exactly as the one requested. And I used to work with Lan Hương and Thoa in I joined Miss Thoa and Hương in a trip to India, and we learned a lot in the trip. So first of all, it's the government authorities who have to complete or to fulfill their obligations first. And second, so as a local, as government authorities, they have to comply first. And second, many people are reluctant to send their request for information because they, well, in the request for information, you have to clearly indicate your name, your address, as well as the purpose of requesting information. So they're reluctant. So I think here comes the role of the media, because we already have the law on access to information, and the role of social organization, political social organization, and media is very important in promoting citizens to exercise their right, and thus promoting the access to information. Mr. Bach? Well, we look at the land use plans. The researcher look at the land use plans as well, the disclosure of land use plan and land pricing framework. But actually, from an individual perspective, they are not really interested in these generic information. For example, they want, but instead they want information, more specific information, like information on specific lot of land where the land is being acquired for a project purpose. So this is the first type of information that, or service, that they are interested in. And secondly, they are interested in how to obtain or the land use rights certificate when they come to, they would like to have like a single point access. Because, for example, for the tax, they have to come to the tax department, and sometimes the tax department at local level, they are struggling. They don't know how the pricing or the valuation should be. And also permits, construction permits, and that sort of thing, and other type of services like maps, because they may pay as well to obtain the map. So I mean, from citizen perspective, they are more interested in the services, the information services, so that they can have a package of information that satisfy their needs, rather than interested in generic information. So I think from the supply side, government departments should ensure that they not just provide information under disclosure requirements, but also provide the information services to meet the needs of citizens. And I think diversity of channels, diversity of suppliers and actors, that would help to boost demand as well. Because you mentioned the fact that having an official request, the citizens is reluctant to file an official letter of request for information. If we can diversify the forms, the Department of Construction, Department of Planning and Investments, and they should work together. And I think provinces should have a process, should map out the process for access to information, because currently it's still fragmented. So it should be, I mean, this is provided for in a number of laws. I think 11 pieces of legislation. But if provinces can design their specific procedures for access to information, land information, that would be very helpful for citizens. Well, I think the ultimate point is who is ultimately responsible for this. Citizens, they want complete information, accurate information, and timely information. Of course, protecting the rights and interests of other stakeholders. So I still believe that the creator of the information is in the best position to provide information upon request as well, because they know which part of the information should be protected and which part can be made available to the public. So two ways for for making information available to the public. First, public disclosure. Second, providing information upon request. So the law on access to information is also specific about the kind of information that that must be publicly disclosed. But I mean, it's also the role of the it's also the responsibility of the government authorities to go beyond what is required by the law. I received a question from a Zoom participant. This is a question to the research team. So the information should be to whom the information should be disclosed to, and what benefits would a public official have if they hide or they not disclose the information. I think back in 2018, we looked for the information on the land pricing framework, and also made a comparison between this and the market price in Thủ Thiêm district, and it's 7 million per square meters at Thủ Thiêm back in that time, but market valuation 97 million, but the price used for negotiating with citizen is kind of like a 17 or 18 million, but when it was put on auction, it's kind of several hundred million. So why do we need a pricing framework? Is it relevant? Is it also a contributing factor to conflicts, land-related conflicts, where 70% of the complaints received has to do with land? So why do we need to have a land pricing framework, and why such pricing framework should be disclosed and to whom? Probably on a daily basis, you don't go to the website to check the information. You only come to find for the information when you need it. For example, when your piece of land is acquired. When it comes to conflicts, prevention is better than cure. But Ms. Nhung has followed this issue for quite some time and can share with us her experience. And then we'll ask Ms. Hương and Mr. Tú to make further comments. This is a hot topic, so it deserves more time for discussion. Well, thank you for the question related to, and also the question related to Thủ Thiêm, because this have to do with the land use master plan of Thủ Thiêm. It has been missing, gone missing. It has gone missing. Why? And so many governments should have the information about the land use master plan. And actually, there's some vested interests in when it comes to this, because the acquired land was not part of the disclosed land use plan, and the price before and after initiation of project, it's kind of 50 or several hundred times before the project and after the project was announced. So we have some rent seeking here, and the rent seeking here clearly showed the power, because, so it also prompted the need to for the government to improve the access to information and disclosure information. So in 2013 law, the pricing, the land pricing framework is announced on a 5-year basis. And then they will, in many cases, stakeholders, they waited, and they will wait until the new pricing framework is announced, because you never seen a decrease or decreasing trend, but always an increasing trend in the pricing framework. And that's why they hide the information until the new pricing framework is announced. Land, according to the Constitution, is owned by the universal population. So you have market price of 97 millions. Pricing framework is 7 million. Compensation rate it's 17 or 18 million. But auction it's 300 millions. And by an administrative decision, they can convert an agricultural land to the residential land. And residential land, you know, is highest price. And the residents, they want to obtain their land use rights certificate, and the land use rights certificate is a kind of agreement between the state versus and the citizen, and the state has the obligation to issue the land use rights certificate So the law on access to information 2016 provides that citizens have the right of access to information, but whether it is being enforced in practice, that's a different question, particularly when it comes to the lack of advanced IT infrastructure and also the lack of proper awareness among civil servants. And particularly in a mountainous area where the IT infrastructure, internet infrastructure, or smart technology hasn't covered much, it raised the question of access to information. And citizens, they are clear, they have legitimate rights and interests in knowing what is the valuation of their asset, the land. So hiding the information or the lack of transparency provides opportunity for rent seeking. And that's why we see a group, certain group in the societies, they have increased their wealth very fast and then they can accumulate, they could accumulate the land before the announcement of the project. And once the project was announced or is announced and the land is converted from agricultural land to residential land, they benefited a lot. The benefits were not equally shared. The owner of the land did not benefit much. It's more the project owner who had acquired the land before the land use plan or master plan is announced. So it's a legitimate right and interest of citizens to know the valuation or the price, the appropriate price of their land, so that they can negotiate with the acquirer. This would help us to prevent a lot of potential land-related conflicts, and also when they give the land to the project, they get some compensation, but that's not sufficient for them to sustain their livelihoods, or their resettlement area is not as good as their former residential place. So it's a kind of derivation of their rights or things that they should be able to enjoy. And it's the responsibility of the holder of public duty to inform the citizens of the changes in the land use plans and other land-related information. And the land law is quite clear about the eligibility for land acquisition, and the citizen should know what compensation they are entitled to, and whether they can have a a decent or adequate resettlement place. So, I mean, disclosure of information helps people to understand the value of the asset, and that also help to improve to clear or to prevent other conflicts. At the individual level, sometimes they try to encroach residents, they try to encroach the public roads, but having them their awareness of the value of the property of the estate also help them to increase the value of their property and also improve their safety, because the public roads are important for ambulance, for fire fighting work, and also it gives the bargaining power, and that also sounds so important because we may have people, Vietnamese, overseas Vietnamese, who are interested in buying land for coming back home to expand their business by having more investment, and disclosure of information would help them to would help us to improve investment as well. And land is limited, but the benefits that we can get from land is to develop infrastructure for promoting economic growth. And all of these have to do with land use master plan and land use plan. So non-disclosure or hiding failure to disclose information or the lack of transparency is not happening. It's actually awakening us and using technology like a QR code or providing links to help the public to access to information. That would be important as the world is becoming flatter, and having more information, giving more powers to the citizen so that they they are empowered for economic development. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nhung.
Thank you for summarizing the significance of our work here, because the research beyond the purpose of for the government agencies, they need to comply with the policies first and the requirements of providing information. That is what we do, right? But then when and how people may need this information and use it, that's their rights. But if we don't do it well, that's our responsibility and will be evaluated fairly by citizens. So such a small exercise would also be a reminder to provincial governments. Mr. Tu and Ms. Hương, any additional points to make? Yes, two quick points. Ms. Huyền mentioned that a reminder to central government agencies on improving the integrated information systems, such as the one under MONRE or the one under OOG on the electronic public services. I agree that we'll need to work to higher standards of services so that citizens, regardless of where they are, can benefit from the same level of service to be provided by government agencies and the office of the government, the owner of the e-government public service portal is working on this assignment. But from the local perspective, we should also agree that there is a lot of room and space for local governments to take their own initiatives to improve their performance. So sharing the initiatives like the Bucknings initiative in getting connected more effectively with the people, improving communication with the people will help other provinces to see how they can improve themselves. And we've got the evidence that we are sharing in our reports that disclosure is highly correlative to economic development. So we have a lot of expectations on information and technology and 4.0 revolution. But we should not forget or ignore the more disadvantaged groups that may not have access to smarter devices to have easy access to information. Then the traditional channels of information will still be meaningful, just not to let anyone behind. Thank you. Thank you. Now I will hand over to Ms. Ha to say thanks to our panelists and to wrap up this discussion. Ms. Ha. Yes, thank you, Ms. Huyền. We are a bit behind schedule, and we have heard discussions and initial findings from an empirical research conducted by CPU and UNDP over a horizon of 1 year. Actually, our effort was most intensive in the first 5 months, but then we were held up by COVID-19 outbreaks, so we could not go to site visits and could only resume a lot later. But I think that the findings of the research are very useful. On the one side, we see that from the supply side, the supplier still have not performed well in enforcing, in delivering their obligations. And even from the demand side, we have still very limited demand and awareness. And we have come up with initial recommendations already. However, building on the suggestions and the comments and views made on the discussion today, we will further improve our recommendations to competent authorities. So on behalf of the organizers, I'd like to thank you very much for attending this event. Our thanks go to participants sitting here in the room and participants online. And I'd like to thank the media agencies for coming to this event very early to cover the event. We'd like to thank the panelists for their insights and valuable recommendations. Our thanks go to the technical team and the interpreters for making these events possible and seamless. And finally, we'd like to thank UNDP for trusting CPU. And our thanks also go to DFAT, Australia, and the Embassy of Ireland in Vietnam for sponsoring us in conducting this research. Thank you all and wish you all good health. Let's say goodbye here, and I hope for a near opportunity to see you all back.